Over the past few weeks, the media and the White House have set their target on Joe Rogan, exclaiming he's distributing COVID-19 misinformation. Well, we're going to challenge you a little bit against that narrative today. What is misinformation? What is truth? What is real? What is not? We're going to break this down and hopefully shed to light some good insights on this particular topic. But before we get started, I'm Dr. Nick Zarowski, and welcome to the channel. Be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and for all my natural health videos, go to www.drz.tv. Podcast host Joe Rogan has addressed claims that he is trying to share misinformation about COVID-19 on his Spotify podcast after scientists and medical professionals, as well as a singer, claimed he had. Now, this is something that's very interesting, and I want to break this down piece by piece because there's so much misinformation about this topic. So first of all, they're saying that, a singer like Neil Young is coming after him for sharing COVID misinformation. Like, why in the world are we taking health information from a guy who spent a lot of his life shooting up on drugs? Like, are you kidding me right now? And he is the arbiter of truth when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic? Unbelievable. And then they had claimed that, first it was 270 medical professionals, and then they went up to like 1,000 doctors. Well, when they actually went in and identified many of these quote-unquote doctors who had claimed that they disagreed with Joe Rogan's information and who he was having on his podcast, they realized these were people who were like doctors of history working in a library. They were not actually doctors who were seeing patients. They were a doctor in their own field, but they were not doctors who worked in the medical profession. So it was silly, to say the least, but most people didn't know that because you just saw headlines that doctors were petitioning to remove Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan went and did this 10-minute video on Instagram, and he said he wanted to address the controversy that had been going on over the past few days with his friends, and he wanted to thank them for their support. Now, this came after Spotify agreed to remove Neil Young's music. Now, Neil Young basically said, "Hey, Spotify, it's either me or Joe Rogan." Well, sorry, Neil Young, but nobody listens to your stuff anymore. So therefore, they're obviously going to have to make a pretty easy choice for themselves. But the thing is that they were basically saying that Joe Rogan was sharing potentially dangerous information that would potentially cause death. Now, that's obviously a really crazy statement, because here's the thing that I've come to realize about all this, quote unquote misinformation. First of all, what is misinformation, right? Because if you look at what we've been told by both the White House, and look, I know that there's going to be people who watch this and they're going to start going, "I can't believe you're going political," and I can see what side you're on politically, because I get that on any video that I ever do on this topic. It's ridiculous. It's both sides of the aisle. If you could see past politics for 2 seconds, you could see that there's people who are in power who have been lying to you for years at this point in order to have a power grab. Now, they're telling you he's giving misinformation. Well, the fact is that he had two very well-renowned doctors who are highly published in the research onto his podcast. And the thing about what they had shared is it was just factual information. It was just information that was different from what the mainstream, I don't even want to call it mainstream, let's call it what it is, corporate news, the corporate news and the government have been sharing. Well, it doesn't mean it's wrong just because it's different. It's just a different opinion. And that's the great thing about living in America. It's one of the few great things that exist is we're able to go and share our opinions, just like I'm doing right now. Well, they're saying that his opinion, and it wasn't even his opinion, it was the doctors who came onto his show who were sharing scientific fact, which wasn't their opinion, it's just scientific fact. They are saying that they don't deserve to have a voice. So when we look at this whole pandemic and we do an honest assessment over what's happened over the past 2 years, we're seeing $5 trillion spent by the federal government, which basically sums up to be more money spent on this pandemic than was spent in World War I and World War II combined. And we're also finding out that the mandates didn't work. As a matter of fact, Johns Hopkins, they recently did a study, and they clearly stated that the mandates did more harm than good. It caused both social and economic damage while having almost no impact on the death rate with COVID-19. That was their exact words from that study. Now, as we see all of these things not working, we also have seen recently by the CDC that, well, in fact, there is this thing called natural immunity that actually does work. And it seems to be the most robust form of immunity that you can have, but yet they're telling people that they can't go to work and they can't, be part of the public space simply because they haven't gotten their shot. Politicians are screaming that they've had victory over this whole thing and that they've done such a great job. Well, as average people are suffering. And many people, because they were given misinformation by the federal government and by the CDC, they're actually struggling. Imagine if they came out and they said, hey, look everyone, it turns out that these masks aren't really going to do what we thought they might, so we should probably, we shouldn't rely on them. And it turns out that social distancing really doesn't do what we thought it could potentially do, so we shouldn't rely on it. What you should be doing is, doing some things to improve your health naturally. We found that if you exercise, it really helps. And we found that if you eat right, it really helps. And we found that natural immunity is the most robust form of immunity. So if you have that, then no worries. But instead, we play this game where we act like what is false is true and what is true is false. And it's all simply because there's a huge group out there, the corporate media, and these big corporate companies like Pfizer, with all of their billions and billions of dollars in funding and lobbying, that are going to promote their narrative. So you could imagine when someone like Joe Rogan comes along, he's extremely dangerous. He's extremely dangerous to them because he's so powerful in the way that he can actually just go and have an honest conversation, and he reaches millions and millions of people. Now, if you haven't noticed, I'm quite sensitive to this topic, and there's a reason for it. It's because I've been pretty much canceled on all of the social media platforms. I used to go out and do videos just like this, and we would be able to monetize them, and we would actually bring in an income to support doing videos like this, and we would have just tremendous growth of hundreds of thousands of subscribers on a quarterly basis simply because we were putting out good information. Well, every piece of my social media has pretty much been shadow banned. We actually don't make any money off of social media anymore, which is why we had to go in and basically say, look, we're either going to have to create a membership community where people who like the information that I put out are willing to support us, or we aren't going to do it anymore because it's costing us too much money. We aren't making what you would refer to as ad revenue from the information that we're putting out. Now, luckily, we had some people who came in and gave some support. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be doing this video because it would just cost a lot of money to produce. And so there's a lot of people who say to me, Dr. Zarowski, I love your information. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You changed my life. Thank you so much for giving us the proper information when it came to this whole pandemic thing and showing us how to improve our health naturally. So we actually took proactive steps, but didn't sit home and just, wallow in fear and wait for a shot, but instead we actually exercised, ate right, took immune boosting supplements. We did the right things and we're okay. There's a lot of people who appreciate that, right? However, the fact is that someone like myself cannot afford to go and do these types of things. I mean, there's a certain point where people go, oh, thank you, and there's a lot of rah-rah, appreciate it, Dr. Zarowski, but the fact is I have a family. This kind of stuff costs money to produce. So when these companies go in, they crush and they crush and they crush. They crush everybody's voice. Now, Joe Rogan's somebody who's huge. The chances of him failing are pretty much impossible at this point in the way of the reach that he gets because he is so big. But a voice like my own was easily squashed and most people don't even know. And though most people appreciate it, they don't understand that we literally cannot go and produce content without support, which is why I highly encourage you to go to drzee.tv and become a member, because that is how this type of information is able to be produced. So when we look at corporate media, sure, they're piling on Joe Rogan, and they're doing it for an absolutely insane reason. We see CNN, we see most of these news outlets who basically are hurt over the fact that he's got a bigger reach by like 20 times compared to them. Because if you look at CNN, for instance, their best show will get like 700,000 viewers in a week. That's their primetime show. Where someone like Joe Rogan will get 11 million views on every episode that he does. But as these companies come down on people, and this is important for you to understand, because if you want to have truth, you have to basically understand this concept. When all the small people get crushed, then all of a sudden, and they have crushed the small people, like this video here may actually have some sort of warning on it. There's no way it'll be able to be monetized. YouTube will run ads on it, but they will not pay us for running ads on it. So all the small voices are crushed, and then there's only one big fish left to go after. I mean, if you look at all the people on social media, it's pretty unbelievable, because most people who, are promoting health and natural health, they aren't saying a word about this stuff. Not a word has come from them. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. Let's keep going. So Joe Rogan says a lot of people have distorted the perception of what I do when he was defending himself. That's another thing, is just diminishing somebody's credibility. I mean, if you look at Joe Rogan, basically all the media will tell you he's an idiot who doesn't know what he's talking about, who is being irresponsible, because he had Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Malone on, who Dr. Malone is actually one of the inventors of the actual science behind the vaccine. Unbelievable, right? But he's not allowed to share his opinion because it differs from the White House and it differs from the corporate media. Rogan went in to say, I'm very sorry for what's happening to Spotify, and they're taking so much heat for it. Spotify since has went and removed 20,000 episodes regarding COVID-19 from their platform. Once again, you, the end user, is not allowed to hear a different opinion simply because the White House, your politicians, and also the corporate media and corporate interests said so. That's why. No other reason. No other reason. And the thing is that it's important to understand is that it doesn't stop here. Like, I think that like Spotify thinks that if they go and give in and they move the needle a little bit, it's going to satisfy all these people who are complaining. It's not going to satisfy them at all. Joe Rogan might say, well, being that they're going to kind of tag these particular episodes with these experts on as COVID information, but you should really go to the primary source, which is going to be your corporate media and, the CDC. That's also not going to accomplish anything. In fact, it's just going to cause more harm to people who are truly trying to find the truth, because this is just a difference in opinion. It is not false. It is factual information. And once you give in a little bit, you have to understand that these people will not stop. They will continue to go after you and go after you. There's many doctors out there that are losing their licenses right now for not going along with this narrative. They don't stop at this kind of thing. They keep pushing. So Joe Rogan says, basically, I'm going to pledge to get more different opinions on the podcast, right? Well, it doesn't matter. You can't win. And as a matter of fact, most people tell me, they're like, Dr. Zarowski, you give one opinion. And that's from the natural health perspective. Well, yeah, there's probably a reason for that. It's because I do natural health. And I also feel that if you want a different opinion, you don't have to look far. All you have to do is turn on the TV, go to any one of the news channels. You'll hear that different opinion from mine. So why in the world would I sit there and try to play this game where I go, oh, well, they believe this and I believe this and this is our difference in opinion? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to give you my different opinion. And I don't really care what people think about it because I'm just giving you the facts. Spotify announced January 27th that it would remove Young's music. As I mentioned before, it was a no-brainer for them. But the problem is now they're having a cascade of different artists that are dropping off the platform. All I can say is that Spotify should just stand up tall on this one, take it on the chin, whoever decides to drop off, but keep moving forward because you cannot win against people who believe that other people should be silenced, because the goalpost constantly moves. There's no particular place where this all comes to an end. So basically, at the end of the day, we have to make sure that you realize that if you want proper information, you're going to have to make sure you're not supporting these big corporate outlets. You're going to have to support the small-time media. You're going to have to support the people who are giving you the truth. Otherwise, it won't exist. You can go to drzee.tv and become a member. I'll put a link in the description below. And make sure that you're standing up for these particular rights, because you have to understand that the goalpost moves also with politics. And wouldn't it be dangerous if there was a law that came out that basically said you cannot have a difference of opinion than what the White House is telling you and their chief medical staff and all those people, right? That's what I'm kind of referring to when I say the White House. I mean, even Jen Psaki basically went out and said Joe Rogan should be censored. He said Spotify is not doing enough, right? That's coming from the White House. They are trying to censor people from the highest level of your government. You may not agree with the facts that we present. However, at some time down the road, what if you got cancer, for instance, and they told you, well, even though this other cancer treatment is found to be effective, if you start early treatment and you do all these things, we're not letting you. We're going to wait till the cancer is really bad, and then we're going to, hit you with chemo and radiation and do all these things that will probably not give you a very good chance of survival. What if they told you that about cancer? What if they told you that about, heart disease or anything else? There's no such thing as early treatment. You're not allowed to have it, and your insurance isn't going to pay for it. Your Medicare isn't going to pay for it. We're the government. We make that choice for you. Wouldn't be a very good day. So we have to make sure that we are careful as to what we allow now, because though you may have an opinion that aligns with the White House and the corporate media, the next time you might not. And then when you don't, it's too late. Hope you enjoyed this video. Become a member on Dr. Z TV. And if you like this video, watch this one next.